Last Christmas, for my gift to my parents, I took all of our family VHS and DVDs and camcorder film and turned them into computer files and put them all in this little player that you can control with a remote, and gave that to my mom and dad, and so that you could kind of watch, any family video basically on command. And so in converting all of those, I had to watch a lot of, obviously, the family videos, and got to see some images of myself during my teenage years. And I used to think that when hearing this first reading, that it must have been really hard for Abraham to sacrifice his oldest son. Watching myself as a teenager in action as the oldest son, I've realized it may not have been as big of a challenge as it seemed to me many years ago. No, obviously, God will never ask us to sacrifice our own child like He did Abraham in today's first reading. But what is it that God asks of us to sacrifice along the lines of Abraham? To sacrifice his oldest son didn't make any sense to Abraham, and probably rightly so. It also was probably a very painful sacrifice as well. So what is it that God asks of us that sometimes makes no sense and often causes us pain? As I was reflecting on that question, another image of mine from childhood came to the forefront, and I'd like to share that with you. Even though there were a lot of kids, my mom and dad made it a priority to give us an allowance, a weekly allowance. You got a quarter for every year old that you were. And every time that we had our payday, sometimes it would be, we'd go a couple of weeks and then my dad would get caught up again or whatever with us. But they'd dole out the cash, to us one at a time. And so I'd come forward and, he'd figure it out, give us our money, and we'd all be in there. And then the next brother or sister would come forward. And we'd get to go back to our little corner of the living room and kind of smell our money and just kind of, rub it in our fingers and get really excited and think about what we were, the army man or whatever that we were going to go buy with that, or the baseball cards. But then a very interesting thing, and something that I'm extremely thankful to my parents for instilling me from as early as we began getting allowance. After everyone got had their payday, we would then start back over again, and everybody would have to come back, and we had what was called the poor kids jar. Probably not politically correct, but we would have to give back out of that money that we had just received. We would have to give back and put into the poor kids jar 10% of whatever our allowance was. And so after dreaming about what you were going to go buy, you had to come back and I remember like hanging on to my dollar bills and quarters like as long as possible, and then dropping them in at the last minute, very sad, and going back to my corner with only 90% of what I had. But again, I'm very thankful to my parents for that. One of the things that I'm most thankful for, them instilling in me and my brothers and sisters, and that practice, it's just become automatic and part of what I do. And again, I think it comes from their training. I learned a couple of things from that experience, and I think that first of all, I learned that it's hard to do that. It's hard to let go of your hard-earned, more hard-earned as an adult. Obviously, when I was 10 years old, having to do dishes at night wasn't really that hard. But it's hard to let go of that once it's been given to us, and we have a very natural tendency, I think, to kind of want to keep that. And it was very challenging, and it takes practice to kind of get into the discipline of giving alms in that way. The other thing I think that I learned is that I got over the fact that I didn't get to see the relief that was being provided. We would sit down as a family at the end of the year and decide where all of that money in the poor kids jar was going to go. My dad would save requests from charities, and he would kind of read us the stories and let us know what each of them each of the ministries were that they were doing. And so it may have been someone providing relief in Haiti or Africa, or someone working with the poor in the inner city of New York. And we would kind of divvy up usually 3 or 4 charities that we wanted as a group to give our money to. But I learned that very often when we give alms, we're not able to see the relief that is provided. And it made me think of, for example, this weekend. None of us will probably, or most of us will probably not get to see the people that are relief from the tornado, our second collection. We will not probably get to see that money put into action. We may not get to see the people that are helped by our St. Vincent de Paul Society here at St. Malachy. We may not get to know, we may not know the young people that are allowed to go to St. Malachy School because of tuition assistance that our parish provides in the ministry that we carry out at that school. We may not get to see the people in Haiti that are supported by our continual collections and support that we provide to those people. We may not get to see that, and that can be a challenge sometimes. It can be a challenge to trust other people to do with our hard-earned money the work of Christ and the charity that Christ provides. But just because we don't get to see it doesn't lessen in any way what we're doing through that almsgiving. It makes me think oftentimes and gives new shape for me to that great passage in Matthew's Gospel where the good people, those who Christ welcomes into heaven, he says, "Thank you for feeding me and for clothing me and for doing all of these great works for me." And they're all surprised that they have done that. They said, "When, Lord, did we do that?" And he says, "Whatever you did for the least of me, of my people, you did that for me." And I think that applies for us, especially today, when we aren't able very often to see the good work that our giving of alms provides for other people. That's why I love as well, thinking back to my childhood, this idea that we have begun in our parish of the children's envelopes, of kind of teaching our young people and forming them in that habit of giving alms, of sharing what has been given to us with other people. It's great to see the young people come forward, especially at the 10 o'clock Mass, typically invite them to do that, and they all come forward smiling and happy to contribute. And that forms me to see them, and it's a constant reminder to me of what Jesus says, that we must become like children if we hope to enter into the kingdom of God. That children's envelope program, I'm sure other parishes have it, but I'd never seen it, and it's been a great source for me and a great encouragement for me as well. And so hopefully, if we have young children, we're taking advantage of the opportunities to form them in that practice of giving alms. If we don't, hopefully we're being formed by the witness that our young people provide to us as well. We're asked by the Church to focus on 3 things during Lent: the practice of increasing our prayer, the practice of fasting from certain things or giving up certain things, and finally we're asked to focus and look at how we give alms and give to the poor and give to those in need. May this Lenten season, may we continue to form ourselves and those around us so that we may see the joy that comes from giving.